this morning I had the overwhelming urge to wash my makeup brushes. Now the issue you have with this is you have to do it, otherwise this urge may not come for another 6 months and I need to wash my makeup brushes. So we will talk about plants later. So I knew I was going to have to wash them, and I knew I wanted to go for a run, have a shower and then film. Oh, another thing is I always wash my makeup brushes in the shower because I hate washing my makeup brushes, but I love being in the shower. So it just made sense. Plus also I'm already in there, you know, let's not waste water. So I did that, but then obviously I had to put makeup on to film, but I didn't have any brushes. And what a normal person would do, what you think I should be able to do, just go, well, I'll just wash them tomorrow, but I won't. And I'm proud of myself for realising that. I'm not proud of myself for being the way that I am, but I washed them and I've managed to do like a bronzerless face, no eyeshadow. Anyway, I've sort of realised, and this isn't a theory that I've come up with, it's just something that I was like, oh, before we had this, we all had to work a lot more. You know, we had to be out collecting food and staying alive, checking for tigers and stuff. Our brain is designed to be focused all the time, and it doesn't have to be now. So it's not. I'm trying to be more present and stop my mind from wandering. And it's only from consciously stopping my mind from wandering that I've realised how often I am elsewhere doing nothing productive. Anyway, I don't know why I was having makeup brush revelations. Anyway, right, today we're going to talk about peace lilies. I love peace lilies, and I think they get a bit of an unfair rap for being difficult. And I don't know if I'm just biased because they're one of the few plants that I find actually quite easy to take care of. And I'm not saying that those of you that struggle to take care of them, that it's all in your head or you're doing something completely wrong. But I think if you have the right conditions, they'll thrive and they won't need a lot of attention. But if you don't have the right conditions, they'll need a lot of attention. So we'll just go through what those conditions are. And there are some things that aren't like mentioned that you might be like, oh. So first things first, peace lilies are toxic. So if you have like cats and dogs that are likely to chew on your plants, I would avoid them or put them up somewhere high. That being said, they're not the same as lily, you know, like the flower lilies, you know, like lilies. They're not the one, they won't, if your cat eats one of the cut flower lilies, that can be fatal very quickly. That it's not the same with peace lilies. They are a completely different type of plant. So whilst they still have the oxalic acid in them, which will make, if your cat takes a mouthful, it'll make their tongue, like their mouth numb, and they might get an upset stomach. But it won't do them a lot of harm unless they eat a lot. Whereas the cut flower lilies, like stargaze lilies, they're just lilies, I don't know. They're very, very dangerous. I would simply not have them if I had a cat. So yeah, they are toxic, but they're not that toxic. Right, so light conditions for peace lilies are, I think they're a good plant for light. What's happening? Bright indirect light, but they will take medium light quite well. You can tell because they have quite a dark leaf. Plants with dark leaves tend to be better in lower light. That being said, you won't get as many flowers if you keep them in a dark room. Really, my words aren't happening today. If you have a variegated peace lily, they like a lot more light. Mine stopped being variegated, which is fine, doesn't really bother me. And I used to keep it in quite a bright window and it still wasn't bright enough for it to grow variegated leaves. So don't get a variegated one unless you already kind of know what you're doing with them. And it's not even like the theory of knowing how to look after them. It's more knowing, do you have high enough humidity? What's your water like? That kind of thing. So I'll just go with a cheap green one, see how it does, and then maybe go for a variegated one later. They're not that expensive, so if you're rich, I mean, go ahead. But I would personally start with a green one and just see what happens. Humidity is one of those things that peace lilies like, but they're not that bothered. If you have a peace lily in lower humidity, it might look a bit sad, but it probably won't die and it'll probably still grow fine. You might just get brown edges on the leaves and it'll look a little bit sadder and droopier. I keep mine in my bathroom, which, if you saw my video on misting, isn't the best place when it comes to, like, if I had a plant that needed high humidity, I wouldn't put it in my bathroom because it's very kind of hit and miss. It's either really steamy or it's dry and cold. But my peace lily seems to really like it in there. Peace lily and ferns seem to do well in bathrooms. But then I do have a big south-facing window in mine, so it's not that cold yet. If you want to keep your peace lily in bright light, if you acclimatise it, there's no reason why it shouldn't be absolutely fine, and it might bloom better, but you will need to acclimatise. They're the same word. I know they're not saying the word, but anyway. The issue I've found with keeping peace lilies in bright light is they dry out a lot quicker, and peace lilies aren't big on drying out, so you might just find you're having to water it a lot. So it's really up to you. It will grow faster though, so swings and roundabouts. With regards to watering, they do like to stay on the moister side, but if you occasionally accidentally forget to water it and let it dry out too much, it'll probably be fine. They do droop when they're thirsty, and I tend to use that as the sign that I need to water it. People say that can lead to long-term damage, but my peace lily is quite old and I've never thought she looked like she was gonna die, which is amazing. If you are the kind of person that waits until plants droop, I think it's fine to do that with a peace lily. But you know, it might just be a case of trial and error. I might just have got lucky with the ones that I have, but that's unlikely. When it comes to the actual water that you use, I use tap water. I sometimes use aquarium water. I've never used filtered water, never used distilled water. I would occasionally use rainwater, but 9 times out of 10, it's tap water. And I've got my plants down here, and there might be the hint. Oh, they have got brown tips. Hang on, I'll show you. God, it's heavy. She's not staying still. Have you got a brown tip? Yeah. Hold it up to my face. Can you see that? It's got a brown tip. Now this is, I'm guessing that is a sign of, it's either humidity or it's, that was an attractive angle. Brown tips on plants tend to be, they're cold, dehydrated, lack of humidity, water quality. I think it's probably water quality because that's the one that it tends to be only on the tips. Don't know why that's making me laugh so much. I'm a child. Interestingly, my other plant doesn't have them, and they're watered with the same plant. They're watered with the same water. Hold up to my face again. See, there's no brown tip there on all the leaf. Maybe like very slightly. Oh, she's due a repot. So yeah, I don't know why it's got brown tips, but they're very sort of, you can't really tell. When you look at my peace lily, you don't think, God, it's got brown tips. You think, God, that thing's dusty. So yeah, if you want to use tap water, my general rule of thumb with tap water, I have no idea if this is true, but it's what I tend to advise because I think, it's probably all right. If you can drink it, it's probably fine to give to your plants. Editing Caroline here. I only mean water here. I'm not advising you go and water your plants with like Coke or Monster or something, but I'm going to assume that you knew what I meant. If you filter it, or if your kettle gets really furry really quickly, people in London, I would maybe either filter it or add dechlorinate. Dechlorinate is not going to do anything with hard water. Maybe use filtered water. Or move. That's a bit drastic. Right, now, we're moving on to soil type. Soil type, I think, divides plant care people probably into the people that actually care and people like me who just like plants, not actually looking after them. I tend to use a similar soil mix for all my plants because people can say to you, it needs to be very fast draining and it needs to be really chunky, it needs to dry out really quickly. That's fine if you're going to then water it as often as you should. If you're like me and you don't, then maybe it could be a little bit denser. Peace lilies are aroids, but because they want to stay a little bit moister, I tend to just use a store-bought houseplant potting mix with a bit of perlite in it. I don't tend to use orchid bark. To be honest, it depends on when I'm repotting it. If I'm repotting it with a load of other plants, it will have orchid bark in it because I'm not making it its own. I don't want it thinking that it's special. So I would just stick with a soil mix that you like. If you notice that it's getting a bit root rotty, i.e. you're getting rotting leaves and your plant's not growing, add a bit of perlite. But in general, as long as you're not overwatering, whatever soil you've got is probably fine. If you want to use cactus mix, you're going to be watering a lot, but it's up to you. I do think people spend a lot of money buying all these fancy soil mixes, which if you like doing that, fine, but I don't necessarily think that you need to. I make my own potting mix because it's cheaper, just because of the volumes that I use. But if you want to buy one, fine. I would add perlite. Why? It doesn't matter. Shush. Right. We're now going to talk about flowering. I'm not a massive fan of peace lily flowers. They're fine. They're fine, but they go brown really quickly. You have to chop them off. And I have noticed they really suck the nutrition out of your plant. If I look at my peace lily and think, why does she look like... They look drained. Probably because the nutrition is going into the flowers, but the leaves start to get sort of yellow and patchy. You get a lot of leaf drop at the bottom. And whenever I see that, I'm like, bet she's got flowers. And you can tell there'll be flowers like starting to grow at the bottom. I do keep them. I don't know if she's got any. Right, I've got a dead one here. Got any live ones? Oh yeah. Like, they're fine. Pretty, cute, but not worth. She actually looks okay this time. I think we're getting to the end of the flowering cycle, but you get a lot of you see the leaves, there's like yellow leaves on the bottom. Whereas, so that plant is in soil. Got a plant in leca that I didn't talk about. It says in my notes here, talk about leca and aquariums. We'll do that after. Basically, you don't need to do anything special to make your peace lily flower. Make it flower. And if it's not flowering, the leaves will probably look better. But what I will tell you is that when you buy a baby peace lily and it has flowers on it in the shop, they are often as in this is what they do. It's not some weird scam. It's kind of like just the way that they sell peace lilies is they treat the plant with gibberellic acid. Gibberellic. That is a hormone that's found naturally in the plant, but they treat the plant and that will artificially make it bloom. They're often juvenile plants that wouldn't bloom anyway. So if you buy a plant with flowers and then those flowers die and it doesn't flower again for months, years, whatever, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's more that it was artificially induced to flower anyway and it's too young. It will do it later. The biggest thing that you can do to induce flowering is improve the light. Brighter, but also you don't want it like really bright because you'll just end up burning it. You'll also want to make sure it has adequate nutrition. I'll talk about fertilising peace lilies in a bit because it is a little bit different to other plants that I've found works best. Temperature, if it's too cold, they won't flower. However, I have noticed that we've had a little drop in temperature, not as much of a drop in temperature as we should have done, but that did induce flowering. So a little drop in temperature, but if they get too cold, no, they're not going to flower. and also time of year. Apparently peace lilies only bloom twice a year, and at first I was like, no, mine bloom all year round. But actually now I'm thinking about it, I think they bloom in spring and autumn. The flowers just last a long time. Repotting, they hate it. If you repot your peace lily and you do nothing particularly stressful to it, it will probably just go for ages. It will drop leaves, it will sulk. They just don't like it. So if it needs repotting, you just have to kind of accept that that's what it's going to do, but also don't repot it unless you need to. They can survive being quite root bound. I know a lot of people don't like to let them get root bound, but I've found it's better. Don't be repotting them all the time because you'll just end up losing loads and loads of leaves. I actually don't think I'm ever gonna repot that one, the big one I've got down there, because it hates it so much. What I'll probably do is just keep dividing it or just cutting off the leaves of the baby ones that come up. So we've already talked about soil type, but I'm just gonna go on about other substrates other than soil. So, right, I've got a plant in leca. I used to have 3, but as you can see, like, it's pretty full with just the 2 in. And this one is in leca. Now, my boyfriend bought that plant maybe 18 months ago to go in his fish tank. So we had a fish tank that was half, it's what the terrarium's in now, so it was half full of water. And then he had a pile of rock work and he wedged the peace lily between the rocks and the tank. So that's how it was supported. It was like the roots were wedged. He washed the soil off, put it in the aquarium, and it grew like a weed. So if you want something to grow in your aquarium, peace lilies love it. They absolutely love it. It grew so fast and it bloomed so well. The only issue is they're not massive under grow lights. They will burn. Their leaves are quite delicate. When it comes to light, they will burn immediately. So that is one thing to watch out for. Then when we came to, basically they got too big. They were far too big, so I decided to put them in leca. And they don't flower, but the leaves grow really big and really fast, and they just look, really like, I don't know, I've not like polished it. It's just this like really happy kind of, and as you can see, it's in quite a small, I was going to say, as you can see, it's in quite a small pot, but I'm not going to repot it. Well, no, she's sorted herself out. But because it's in leca, like this is fine. It doesn't matter. They'll just keep growing into the bottom of the pot. When it's, I might take this one out. There's like 3 main plants in there. And then put that in a separate pot, but I'll just put it back in with the other one. So the reason I think it did so well in the aquarium is the nutrition that it got. I fertilise all my plants with the, what's it called? General hydroponics, you know, the 3. All my plants get fertilised with that purely because I've got it. I got it when I was getting into leca and I was much more diligent with my plant care. But when I read it, I was like, oh, you can use it on soil as well. Perfect. So that's what I water it with. And it's almost like they don't accept chemical fertilizers. I've tried a couple. When it's quite difficult to tell when plants need fertilizing, but they're a little bit, they go a bit yellow and sad, and you can sort of tell because they've gone yellow and sad. And that's also when they tend to be blooming, so I think they're just out of nutrients. If I water in the general hydroponics, I don't really get anything. No deterioration, maybe a bit of an improvement, but nothing strenuous. I just pick, my brain's just like, you strenuous, that's a fine word. No. I can't think of a word. Nothing, you know, it's not good enough. The chemical fertilizers just don't seem to be good enough for a peace lily. I don't know if it's just the plants I have or the water or something, but the other plants are fine. They're just like, we didn't like that. The one in leca is she preferred, like, she seems okay. So it must be, I don't know, the general hydroponics plus soil plus peace lily just isn't working. All my other plants, like most of my plants are in soil, well, half and half, and they're fine with the general hydroponics. I'm getting excited and I talk too fast. So yeah, what does work is a natural type fertiliser. I have tried other fertilisers as well and we just have this same issue. She's just like, I don't like it. So what she does like is worm castings, or what she really likes is compost, but no, it smells and I wouldn't get root rot because I don't water my plants often enough, but you end up with fungus gnats and no. Peace lilies I feel would do really, really well in a terrarium. I think that would just be perfect for them, but they would grow so fast that it would burst out. If you watched my previous video on, not the previous one, but you know, one from before, about my terrarium, I had a big velvet touch in there and she got too big. She was like under the lights like that. And I wanted to take her out and pot her up, but she'd grown through the foam substrate into the leca. Basically, if I'd have pulled it out, I would have A, destroyed the roots, and B, destroyed the terrarium. So I just had to cut it back, and it was so sad. Like, the leaves were huge, big, gorgeous, velvety leaves. She's already grown back. This is going to be something I have to do like weekly. The velvet touches, calathea in terrariums are just like, yes! And I think peace lilies will be the same. How is this video 25 minutes long? So yeah, that's a natural, a worm castingsy type situation, or even just like fresh. What they really want is fresh compost all the time, like fresh potting mix all the time, but they don't like being repotted. So this is why people say that they're picky, because they are. Propagating peace lilies is easy. They grow babies. So if you sort of feel around, this is really hard to demonstrate. This is a plant. These leaves are part of, oh my God. Basically, if you take your plant out of the soil and remove some of the soil, you should be able to just gently pull apart the plants. You can't leaf propagate. They don't have nodes. You just pull them apart. And people always say be very gentle. No, just rip them. As long as you've got some roots, they're probably fine. You can prop them. What am I doing with my hair? You could probably like prop them in water for a bit, but they're quite tough for a plant that has a reputation for not being tough. They are under certain circumstances, and if you divide it and pot it in soil straight away, as long as you don't let it dry out, it'll probably be fine. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about. The hell was it? It was pests. Completely forgot. But basically, if you don't like pests, peace lilies are such a good option because they don't seem to get them. I'm not saying that they can't get them or they've never got them. They probably have before, but they're just not prone. Pests just don't seem to like them. I used to keep mine in a lovingly named corner of my house called Spider Mite Corner. And I keep my thrips plants in the bathroom with my peace lily and it doesn't have thrips. So yeah, they're good with pests. Right, that is Peace Lilies 101. If you have any questions, leave them below and I will respond in as timely a manner as I can manage. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next week. Bye.